Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your Master Ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I do want to apologize in advance if you hear some meowing in the background, because my cat is really insistent on coming into my recording space, and I don't want to let him in.
He loves you.
I was looking out my window and then going to the other window and then looking out that window and then coming back to my window to look out that window and then going to the other window, etc., etc., etc.
Well, I mean, you know, to a house pet, that's their equivalent of channel surfing.
You know what? You're very right. You're so right.
You need so the solution is you need to get more channels. You need to get a house with more windows, so then he has more channels.
You know, bullshit has his own TV. Like, I literally give him all the channels he could ever want. He's just spoiled, and right now he's going outside my door, and it's very pathetic. And I want to let him in so badly. Oh no, he's scratching. Oh no, I just hear the little scratch.
He knows you're talking about him.
I know. He's like, bitch, what'd you say? Excuse me? Are you talking about me?
All right, Mike, how are you doing?
I'm good, if not remarkably busy. I've been juggling a bunch of government responsibility things, dealing with some interesting drama on Twitter, and still doing school and everything, and it's been busy, folks, to say the very least. I've barely slept in what feels like a month.
All right. Well, okay. Well, hopefully tonight will be a nice bit of levity for you. This is our Halloween Spooktacular, and as is our tradition for our Halloween show, it is our tradition to discuss Halloween things, and we kind of hit upon a topic that we're kind of surprised that we never actually covered before, and that's the actual Halloween movies. So this year for our Halloween Spooktacular, we're doing an old versus new. We're talking about the original John Carpenter's Halloween and the 2018 sequel / reboot. So that'll be lots of fun. But of course, there is procedure to follow. So we are going to begin, as always, with Ask a Geek, and we got a bunch of questions here that we're looking forward to. So the first question here is for me, and it is from Eric. And he asked, what are my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack? And I'm of two minds. On the one hand, I think it's really awesome that they're finally bringing in Nintendo 64 games. The Sega Genesis games were a surprise. I didn't expect that to happen. But on the other hand, like, I mean, I'm going to get it just because the idea of playing Ocarina of Time on the go is just, something I love, and I didn't. As much as I love the 3DS remake, I think the Nintendo 64 version is my favorite version. So to be able to take that on the go is really cool. But on the other hand, like right now, for the price that they're asking, especially for a family plan, which is like $70, it's just it's really hard for, even though I already bought it, it's hard for me to really justify that price. I guess I really need to see what Nintendo is planning to do with it long term, because in addition to, of course, the extra online games, they're also releasing the Animal Crossing DLC as a freebie that you get with the Nintendo Switch Online membership. Now, if this is a sign of things to come, that Nintendo is going to be putting out their DLCs for free as part of an NSO expansion pack membership, then I'll have an easier time justifying that price, because, you can either, pay X amount of dollars a month for something that will get you any DLC that is coming out that you may want for a game that you have through the NSO membership, or you can decide if there's only a couple of games that you might want the add-ons for, you can just buy them individually and forego the Switch Online membership. So it's really kind of early days right now. I can't really make right now, in this moment, gun to my head, it's very hard for me to justify the price that they're asking.
It's funny you mentioned this, though, because literally this morning I got this I got the expansion pass, and I did a little bit of kind of reading into it. And it's funny you mentioned Ocarina of Time. That's the one game that runs like shit on this service. Like, you get missing frame rates, massive like kind of frame drops, and even button delays if you're playing with a non-wired controller. There's an article on Kotaku, I think, that like talks about this, and I was like, wow, glad I'm not paying for this, because a friend of mine actually got me signed up for it. But I'm kind of with you on this. I hope they do something more long-term and maybe get better emulation and better kind of stuff in the background to make things work better, because right now that's a big pill to swallow. But if they do what they're doing with Animal Crossing, with other titles, like say, oh, I don't know, Mario Party, and hey, here's a new course every couple of months, that'd be fine.
Yeah, so like I said, it's early days right now. Now, as for the emulation issue, I haven't seen the Kotaku article because I don't read Kotaku, because fuck Kotaku. But that's a discussion for a whole nother table. But I mean, you know, that doesn't surprise me, because there were some issues with the NES and Super Nintendo games when they first came out. So, you know, being in IT, it's easy for me to kind of forgive for day one issues, because, like, you know, doing anything with information technology is almost like coming up with a strategy plan for a battle. No plan of attack ever survives contact with the enemy, and no initial setup ever survives, you know, day one stress testing out in the market. So I'm pretty confident that before the month is out, we're going to see the N64 online service get an update that'll fix a lot of those issues. Because, I mean, you could say many things about Nintendo, but they're not a company to just let something sit there and just not work. Unlike, say, you know, Microsoft, but, you know, that's again, discussion for a different table. I do hope, however, that we see a more steady stream of support for the online game offerings. You know, like, when was the last time we got a significant addition to the NES or the Super Nintendo libraries? You know, this is really the whole online gaming aspect of Nintendo Switch Online, I felt, has been severely underutilized, especially when you consider the caliber of the libraries for the consoles that are being offered. You know, there are a ton of games that should be, even discounting third-party licensing, there are a ton of first-party Nintendo games that should be, you know, ready and available on these services that I'm just baffled are missing. So, but, you know, I could go on all day about that. But anyway, next question here. Let's see. Okay, here's one for you, Kat, and this one actually just came in today. And this one comes from Mary, and she asks, "Have you seen the Dune movie yet?"
Yes, of course I did.
And what did you think of it?
So first off, I watched it on HBO Max in a nice home theater setup rather than going to the movies. So I cannot guarantee that I got the full experience. But I certainly was able to pause to pee, because that was it was a very long movie, y'all. I enjoyed it for the most part. It was, I thought there was a lot of stuff in it that the way that it was edited was a little confusing, and if I didn't know the books and the other film and the miniseries and stuff, I would probably find a lot confusing. They have a lot of, like, Paul acid trips on Spice and sees visions, and then the visions just become more and more constant, and then it's like, oh, you're having visions of a scene right before the scene happens. Okay, this is actually kind of annoying. And it has a lot to do with just the way the book was written. There's a lot of internal monologuing in the book. It's like 90% internal monologue in the book. So this is kind of their way of explaining Paul's visions without Paul having to reflect on everything internally. So I think the visions make everything really confusing. But, I mean, most people, I think, have been able to follow it. It's just, like, it's a little jarring jumping from thing to thing with, like, literally no preemption. I guess that's a word. Otherwise, I really enjoyed it. I thought the cast was pretty good. There's Though my hang up is that it is part one. It is part one, and like as of the day we're recording this, part two just got greenlit. So they kind of made a film with no guarantee that they were going to make the part two, which is a little daring, I think. But
what does that say about Hollywood that is actually surprising? Like, you think something as big as Dune, they'd have like greenlit like 4 movies already.
Dune
there was no way they weren't
cursed.
going to greenlight it, though.
No, but Dune is so cursed.
Yes.
I mean, the original Dune film was a huge, huge flop, and it's a cult classic, and now, especially among like people I know, but like it is not a good film. Just being honest here, I love it. That doesn't make it good, but Dune is very, very cursed. People have tried to make it, and studios don't want to give it the time of day. The mini series were not particularly well received because they were made in an era in between technology, so a lot of the CG is very bad. It's really just such a difficult thing to adapt. So I can't imagine why they would only why they would only guarantee one, except they thought for sure that it was going to flop. But they spent so much money to make it look good.
Now, a question that I have. So we talked in our Lord of the Rings episode about how the Peter Jackson films, they had stuff that if you were a fan of the books, you'd be like, oh, yay, squee, fan service, but they were still really accessible to people who hadn't read the books. Does Dune kind of tread that same line, or is it more something that you'd really only get enjoyment out of if you've already read the books and know what's going to happen?
I don't know that there are a lot of things that I picked up on that were Easter eggs or anything like that. I thought the movie actually did a very good job of balancing out having a lot of exposition to explain things, because it is a very politically dense film. So there's a lot going on that needs a lot of groundwork laid for it, and if you don't know anything going in, then you have to have a lot of exposition to figure out what the fuck. But it didn't explain every single little detail, and you're sort of expected to pick up on some things. So I thought there was actually a pretty good balance in there. Maybe a little too much exposition, like it could have been subtler, but in the end, it really did fulfill that need to, explain what the fuck is going on. But again, not a whole lot in the way of like anything super, super special that's just for the nerds out there. Everything was just sort of, honestly, the one detractor I would give, other than the hallucinating all of these different scenes back and forth, is that a lot of stuff happened in it, but going like off the pacing of it, that there has to be a second film, because it just does not feel complete. It has like sort of a weird pacing the further you go in. So it's like, that something else needs to happen, but you've already been there for 2.5 hours, and you're like, okay, when does this end? Like, what's the end scene here? And every time you're like, this is it, and then it's not. This is it, and then it's not. And it's sort of like The Hobbit in that regard. Or the Return of the King, rather.
One of the things I did notice, Kat, and especially for you, it's an interesting time to be a Dune fan, because there's a lot of peripheral kind of media that's around Dune right now. I know there's a company over in England named Modifius. Sorry, I stuttered there for a second. They're the same company that does Fallout. They do Star Trek Adventures. They have a Dune RPG that's been pretty well received. There's a game company out of New Zealand called Gale Force 9, and they released 2 Dune board games this year, or at least one. I've got one of them, which, by the way, Kat, give me your address, because it's coming your way. And there's also a bunch of toys done by McFarlane. A friend of mine online named Justin was showing off his Dune collection figure the other day, and to see action figures, board games, role-playing games, do not be surprised if they do like another round of Dune computer games or console games in the next couple of years, if the franchise stays as successful as it is right now.
Give me a Battle for Arrakis 2. That game was awesome on the Sega Genesis.
Yeah, like there's going to be a lot of really cool kind of tie-in media, and one of the things I do for fun is I watch prop auctions, because I'm a big Hollywood kind of prop guy, and there was a bunch of stuff from the original Dune movie that just came up for sale. I know there was a knife somebody used that evidently was pretty important, and it went for a pretty reasonable price. There was a bunch of costumes, there was modeling, original sketches. I've never seen the original. I'm hoping to get out to see Dune because we don't have HBO Max in Canada because digital rights suck. But yeah, I mean, hearing you be so enthusiastic about it, but also saying, if you don't read this, you might be a little lost. I'm more interested to see it now than I ever have been. So it looks exciting.
It's definitely worth a watch. It is a gorgeous film. There's actually quite a lot of action in it, considering that the book is quite, let's be real here, the book is a bit of a slog. But they know that this is like, you have to treat an audience with a lot of cool action scenes in order to keep people interested. It's really interesting for me as a fan of the old film to watch this new film and see how much it is, look at the differences, but also see how much more it is accurate to the books. And it actually kind of a lot of the dialogue is almost word for word because some of the dialogue was pulled directly from the books. So I think it's really fun watch. There's a lot of, it's just so visually, it's a visual feast, as one would say. There's a lot of different stuff going on. It is all very rich looking, like just lots of neat stuff happening. Yeah, really, really cool. Definitely worth a watch, whether or not you're familiar with Dune. And if you ever get confused about what's going on, just replace the word spice with oil, and then just pick a bunch of different countries to assign to all the different planets, and you have, just call Arrakis the Middle East, and it all makes a lot more sense.
Okay. Alrighty, let's see here now. Okay, we got another couple questions here. Let's see here. Okay, here is one for me, and this one comes from Luke. And he asked, what is a pet peeve that I have with gaming news? And this is a real big one for me. I really hate fucking rumor mongering. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. So there's a lot of gaming YouTubers out there who they will they basically try and summon like conspiracy theories about like why this company is going to be doing something. So like a big one was, of course, the Nintendo Switch Pro that we've been hearing about for so long. You had all of these gaming YouTubers who were talking about like, okay, well, the Switch is selling really well. We're more than halfway into its life cycle. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is all true. But then they go on and say that like these things are evidence of why Nintendo is going to be putting out a Switch Pro model soon. And it's like, no, that's not evidence. You're confusing correlation with causality. Like, just because A is true does not automatically mean B is true. And then another one, when Metroid Dread was announced, and it was, the news was coming out that it was topping the pre-order charts. They were saying that, oh, well, that's evidence that Nintendo is going to be releasing a Metroid collection on the Switch. It's like, no, that is not evidence. Where are you getting your sources? You're grasping at straws here. And I really hate stuff like that, because it's if I'm being generous, it's a bunch of people wanting to believing things that they want to believe. At its worst, it's just straight up clickbait and toying around with people's wants and expectations, and I really fucking hate that. So like that is like my biggest pet peeve when it comes to any kind of, not just gaming YouTubers, but like gaming news in general, is like, pulling all these disparate threads together and arranging them in a circle and saying, connecting them all with the red string and saying, okay, this is, all of this is true, so that means that this thing is also true as well. And it drives me nuts.
I've got one for you. Just because you kind of hit on something that is so hard to parse sometimes as a journalist, because you talk about what are your sources. Some of these guys are reliable, but you are so right on the money, it's scary. They do it for kind of clickbait. They do it for headlines. They want the views. They don't care whether the news is accurate. Because, like, for example, you're a pretty big Nintendo Switch guy. Do you remember how many people say they found the leaked characters for, like, kind of Smash, or we'd see a Best Buy listing, as you mentioned, for, like, Metroid Prime kind of trilogy or stuff like that? People will look to ratings boards for games that haven't even been released yet, let alone officially announced, or, you know, whatever. It's so hard to sort out what's real and what's not. I know I've gotten caught a few times on this, not because of, like, rumor mongering, but because the sources, they seem legit, but then it turns out the site that reported originally didn't verify their sources, so it's a game of telephone. And it doesn't serve you as the public very well if we as the journalists are like, oh, by the way, oh, this wasn't true. Because I was sure, like you mentioned about the Nintendo Switch Pro, I am genuinely surprised we didn't get some news about that, but we got the OLED model, which seems to me like, who cares? But I know there's reasons for it to exist. So you're right. It's incredibly frustrating when it comes to gaming news, and rumor mongering is the worst right now.
I mean, let me be clear. We are going to get a new model Switch sometime in the next couple of years, because we are getting close to that 7-year life cycle. And, you know, there have been reports going out, which I'm inclined to believe, because they're coming from the developers, saying that they've gotten new Nintendo development kits. So that tells me that there is something coming down the pipe that we haven't heard about. So, like, stuff like that, I'm willing to find pretty credible. Stuff from, like, the ESRB ratings board, I'm also willing to find credible, as long as they're willing to show, like, something that could be reliably sourced from the ESRB. But then you got, you know, the ones that really drive me nuts are like, you know, this game is selling really, really well. It has not sold really, really well before. Therefore, Nintendo is going to put out a collection of these games for the Nintendo Switch, you know, quote, era demonstrandum. And it's like, no, that is not how that fucking works at all. You know, your basic first year logic and debate professor would throw you out of the fucking classroom if you said that. And it just drives me absolutely up the fucking wall. So, but yeah, that is my biggest bugbear when it comes to gaming news, is just, like, you know, the fucking rumor mongering. So
I've got one really quick to add, because it's not something a lot of people talk about, and it was brought up in the Washington Post in the last, like, 2 weeks, where it talks about people who review games, and that's something that I do, for example, and they talk about how much time reviewers get with game versus actually reviewing the game. And sometimes you'll get these games that are literally 100 hours plus. I'm looking at you, Persona 5 Royal. And sometimes a good company, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain here, they'll give you time to properly review it so you can actually give an accurate analysis. And other times, sometimes as a review, you might get the game 2 or 3 days before release, which is, it's rough, but sometimes you can do a game like, say, Far Cry 6, which will take you about 40 hours to beat, 20 if you speed run and don't listen to anything. It is possible to beat it. But you'll see, this is very kind of noticeable, is when you're reviewing games and you're watching the trophy list, and you know you're in a very select pool of people that are currently playing this, but that data is available across the entire PSN. You might say, let's say you roll credits on a game, it might say this trophy is very rare, X amount percentage of players have actually done it. And sometimes you'll see a review out, and a lot of us journalists talk, and you know there's no way certain outlets or certain people could have beaten the game given the time that they got, unless they had some really special access to it, which most of us don't. There's some disingenuity in the reviewing process. I mean, it's a pet peeve of mine, because I hear people talk about things, or they'll only show footage from the first couple of hours of gameplay, but certain games change up how the, like, endgame is, like about halfway through the game, and certain reviews don't talk about that. So it's a little strange, and that'd be my pet peeve if I had to mention something, just being on the other side of this.
Another one that I have, and this is one that's thankfully not as common, but when review outlets give a game to review to someone who does not like that genre of game, like it always baffles me when, you know, I'm reading a review of a game. Let's say it's a, you know, the new King of Fighters, and the first thing in the review is a paragraph of why the author hates fighting games. I'm like, then why the fuck are you reviewing this one? You know, you've already shown your hand. You know that you're not going to like this.
But sometimes by giving that person something new that they don't like, and it's supposed to be something really good, that can really turn people's opinions. And a really good example is something that happened to me very early on. I hated open world games like Skyrim, but Bethesda gave it to me 2 weeks early back in 2011. And they're like, well, we don't know if this is going to be something you're going to dig, but here, give it a try. And look how much I love Skyrim now. That got me into Fallout too.
But it's been my experience that situations like yours are the exception and not the rule.
Yes, it's rare. Yeah, it's rare.
And to me, that's not worth the trade-off of having someone who comes in who, let's say someone, let's say you didn't like, you wound up, absolutely hating Skyrim. Well, how much of that is
personal bias
versus legitimate grievances with the game? It's kind of like, it's kind of the same reason why you're not going to send me to review a slasher film. Ironic, giving our discussion topic for this episode, because I don't like slasher films. So if I come out and say that this slasher film is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen, well, okay, how much of that is me coming at it righteously, and how much of that is just me being a pill because I don't like slasher films? So, but anyway. But speaking of slasher films, we're gonna roll right into our discussion topic. So thank you as always to everyone who sent in Ask a Geek questions. You can send them to us as always through the email at drgonzo@nerdtothethirdpower.com. Love getting your questions, love reading them on the show. So get yours in, and you just might get yours read on the air. And so with that, we're going to roll right into the meat and potatoes of our Halloween Spooktacular, discussing what else? Halloween. This is actually a topic that I'm surprised we have actually never covered because it's so tailor-made for a Halloween show. It's actually right there in the title, Halloween. So this week we're going to be doing an old versus new. We're going to be comparing the original John Carpenter Halloween film and the 2018 reboot / sequel. And yeah, it's going to be that should be a lot of fun. So Mike, this is your idea for the show. So why don't you get started? What made you decide to want to cover these films for this year's Halloween show?
Well, I kind of figured it was kind of topical because Halloween Kills, which is the sequel to the 2018 movie, just came out on Peacock. It's in theaters in Canada. And I figured good a time as any. The 40th anniversary was back in 2018. It's been in the public kind of consciousness. And, Halloween has been one of those franchises that it has had a lot of ups and downs when it comes to the character, the lore, and having it done right has been something the Halloween franchise has kind of struggled with. We've had multiple directors, multiple interpretations of it. Excuse me. And very few have gotten it right. Halloween 2018 does something a little bit different because it wipes the slate clean from the other things, kind of does its own thing. And I think it's a really good example of a soft reboot done right while still retaining some connections to the original. And obviously the 1978 original by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, what more can really be said about it other than it really made the slasher genre something iconic, gave us a character, and really showed off different techniques in film which are still very much used today. And you'd see it done in knockoffs like Friday the 13th, which does its own thing, but you would get characters like Jason would often get compared to Michael Myers and stuff like that. And it's a franchise that has a surprising amount of legs to it. I'm very surprised it's still going today. And the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis is still involved as much as she is super surprising. And even Rob Zombie at one point. So that's kind of why I picked it, because I love talking about this franchise. It's not my favorite franchise. That's Friday the 13th. But I know more about this franchise because I've seen more documentaries on it, which is weird. There's more docs on this than like anything else like considered in the horror kind of genre. There's at least 3 or 4 up on YouTube that are over like 2 hours long, and they're really well done. So yeah, that's all I got for right now.
Okay, all right, so we'll just go ahead and just start getting into these movies, piece by piece, and I will remind you, Mike, because you have a tendency to go on tangents, we are discussing the movies, not supplemental materials surrounding the movies, because I know if I let you go, you will go all night. Okay.
True, yeah. Although there isn't much supplemental stuff that really ties in other than action figures, there's been some novelizations. Honestly, most of the Halloween stuff has stayed on the screen, which makes it remarkably easy to talk about. Like I said, it's weird there isn't more tie-in merch or IPs to this, actually.
Okay, so let's start with the original Halloween film. I should call up real quick the Wikipedia page for Halloween, so I have a ready reference here.
Okay, so while you're kind of doing that, I guess to kind of...
I got it.
Okay.
All right, so let's start with the original 1978 Halloween film. And this is one that I'd actually already seen before we came to this topic. I watched it a few years ago for the first time as part of a film history class, because the Halloween is really, if you look at it, it's the first modern slasher film. You know, there have been kind of serial killer movies before Halloween, but this is the first one to really take it in. You know, those were kind of like film noir murder mystery films. This is really the first one to really take the serial killer film into the horror territory. And it's a real interesting exercise to go back and watch and see like all the tropes and plot devices that we come to associate with modern slasher films and how they originated with Halloween.
Yeah, because you look at the structure. I mean, it's about a boy named Michael Myers who just for one day snaps, and then his Dr. Samuel Loomis puts him into an institution where he's kept there for decades. And he says in one of his opening passages in a bit of narration, he's like, he had the devil's eyes, black as anything I'd ever seen. The only way to stop him is to keep him locked up. And it's weird because you look back at the original, and the movie's big star was Donald Pleasence, wonderful actor who since passed away many, many years ago. But he stuck with the franchise for a number of years. But you look at the character of the doctor who's trying to help and save him, warn people, but you mentioned tropes too. This is where the babysitter thing really kind of caught on, because Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, is babysitting Tommy Doyle. You see then like people have sex, they die. You start to see the brutality in America start to ramp up with this, because Dawn of the Dead had come out in like 77, and that was George Romero and was gory as fuck. But John Carpenter made a horror movie. Sure, there was gore, there was blood, but it was never super explicit. Like, you never saw a head explode, but you saw the one guy nailed to the wall with the kind of butcher's knife. And that was like, okay, you can be disturbing, but I don't need to see his guts all spilled out on the floor. And I thought that was really creative. Plus, he did his own music, which is... I've always heard this trope, or not this trope, this adage that they teach you the Halloween theme when you're learning piano because it's so simple, but it sounds so iconic and it's really easy to learn. And I always thought that was kind of neat, if it's true. I don't play piano, so I couldn't tell you. One thing, because you watched it for film history class, did they ever talk about how the movie was lit?
We discussed, remember this is like some 15 years ago I took this class.
Okay.
We talked a bit about how it was lit. We talked a bit about shot composition. But one of the things that I remember really being focused on was in sort of the subtleties of the building of tension. So one of the things that my professor pointed out when we had to watch this film before he assigned it, He said, I want you to keep a scorecard of how many shots you see Michael Myers in, and come back in and tell me how many shots he was in, and I guarantee you nobody will get it right. And so when everybody came, when we all came back, everybody had, their scorecards, and it was all just the shots. Everybody had all the same, roughly the same total. It's basically all the shots where you actually see Michael Myers in full view. And it turns out there are actually a lot of shots and scenes in this movie where Michael Myers is present, but he's kind of hidden. So it's almost like a game of Where's Waldo. So a really good one is a scene where Laurie is in the house babysitting the little boy. Mm-hmm. And she gets up from the couch to pick up the phone. And if you look in the window behind the couch, you can see Michael Myers actually looking in and watching her. And it's something that, you wouldn't notice it until you don't consciously notice it until it's pointed out to you, but it helps to add to just this level of creepiness to the film. And it's one of the things that really sort of impressed me about this film is, like you said, it's not explicit or gory. It's a very subtle form of tension building. Everything it's almost like innuendo in a way. There's a lot that we're not explicitly shown. We're not given a whole lot of up closes of Michael Myers. In fact, the majority of his time in the film, we're actually looking through his eyes. We don't actually get to see him and what he looks like until, I want to say, past the halfway point of the movie.
Yeah, you get a brief look at his profile when he's escaping the sanitarium, but you're right, it's not until almost the very end you see his face, kind of, and he's just a guy. And that's something I don't think people expected. They expected him to be some supernatural monster, but he's just a guy.
Well, that's another thing that I really like about the original film is it's never explained why Michael Myers does what he does. It's never explained why he is a killer. Like Friday the 13th. Okay, Jason was a deformed little boy who was bullied, and he's taking revenge on people who remind him of bullies. All right, Hellraiser, Pinhead, he's a demon, and demon's gonna demon. Freddy Krueger, he was a child molester who wound up getting killed by vigilante justice or an accident, depending on which continuity you're in, and he's getting his revenge. Michael Myers, first movie, no one knows why he does what he does, and I think that's what makes him such a frightening antagonist. Is Jason and Freddy and Pinhead, we kind of know the method to their madness and what led them to be what they are. Michael Myers, we have no fucking clue. I mean, what causes a 6-year-old boy to just snap and stab his sister?
Let's say, he's just evil.
Yeah, and it's never explained why he does what he does, and I think that is what contributes a lot to why Michael is such a terrifying presence in the film. And it's one of the things that I felt actually wound up being a detraction from the 2018 film, where they bring back Laurie Strode, and Michael Myers has this it's personal vendetta against her, because it takes away a bit of that mystique that in the first film, he's just a killer. It's just he does what he does and we don't understand why, and Laurie just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, okay, 2018, now it's personal. He's out to finish what he started, and that kind of humanizes him, and I feel like that kind of takes away from his mystique in the 2018 film.
I was about to say, I mean, in the first movie, he's just there. He's going home. Wrong place, wrong time. I'm going to kill you because you're in my way. In the 2018 film, you're right, he is revenge driven, kind of. It's never fully explained. Someone explained to me Michael Myers is like a shark. You just get the fuck out of the way and hope he doesn't see you. Here, he's got a very deliberate plan, and he just kills along the way. Like, literally, he's going back to his childhood home to follow this up in Halloween Kills, and it's just wrong place, wrong time, I'm gonna murder you. I did like what they did with Laurie's character in Halloween 2018, how she's traumatized. They wipe out continuity with literally one line of kind of dialogue, In the original,
where they it's like, well, isn't she like his sister? It's like, oh no, that was something somebody made up. Yeah,
yes.
That was something I always thought was stupid as hell. Was the idea that Laurie was somehow there were two big explanations given. One was that Laurie was somehow Michael Myers' other sister, and then the other was that he was the instrument of this cult, and Laurie was supposed to be like a sacrifice that he was supposed to kill. Both of which are stupid as hell.
But like when you get into the continuity for Halloween's 4 through 6, there's some interesting ideas, but they don't belong in a Halloween movie, in my opinion. Just have him be a guy who's really strong. It doesn't need to be supernatural. It doesn't need to be Jason. And Halloween has always treated its killer a little bit better than Jason, although he still gets shot and manages to survive and move on. And like in Halloween 2018, he gets his hand partially destroyed. And I actually have to go back and rewatch Halloween Kills at some point and see if they maintain the continuity, because he should be missing 2 fingers off of one hand. But there's something about it that takes away from it, the fact that now he has a reason. But the 2018 movie, as much as I love modern horror movies and I love special effects, I love practical effects, I love horror and gore because, I'm a Fangoria kid, it almost seemed unnecessary at times. Like, I prefer a more atmospheric fear and, like you said, like have the movie see through his eyes or seeing through everybody's eyes but his. I guess this is more Laurie's movie, but there's one scene I always thought was particularly unnecessary. The two podcasters who go to visit him in the sanitarium have his mask from the Attorney General's office. So, okay, sure. And they go to this gas station, and one of the reporters is going to the bathroom, and the other guy is filling up the car with gas, and he walks around and he sees the guy dead with all of his teeth missing, and then you see another guy whose coveralls are now gone, and he's like, oh dear, there's a problem. So he goes to find his friend in the bathroom, and Michael Myers shakes the door where the woman's in the toilet, and he drops all the teeth he's ripped out of the person's head for no particular reason. When you watch the original Halloween, it's stab, stab, strangle, punch, kill. It's never anything as dramatic as Jason from the later movies where he gets super creative with what was around him. Michael Myers in the new movies seems unnecessarily brutal, and I wonder if that's influenced from the Rob Zombie movies, or maybe that's just the way modern horror's kind of going.
I think it's just because it is a newer. It's kind of funny they were doing this right after our Treehouse of Horror, after our Halloween show. We discussed Treehouse of Horror. I think Bart Simpson said it best. It's like, it's kind of like the original Halloween. It was pretty shocking when it came out, but it's pretty tame by today's standards. So it's, I think it's just the fact that we've had so many horror films come out that built on what the original Halloween built, that now we go back to the original Halloween and we're just kind of, it's just kind of blasé. So they kind of have to amp things up to keep, an air of menace and shock surrounding Michael Myers. I do agree the teeth thing was really out there, because Michael Myers he's very utilitarian.
Yeah, he'll use what's there.
Yeah, he'll use what's there, and he will be brutal but he doesn't like. In terms of the kills themselves, he doesn't really embellish it during the kill. Now he'll do so afterwards. Like, remember the scene in the original where after he killed Laurie's friend, he kind of laid her out on the bed with the Judith Myers headstone next to her. But as far as the kills themselves, yeah, he's very utilitarian. He doesn't really kind of drag things out or kind of taunt you, which I felt like he was kind of doing with the teeth. Yeah, that felt kind of just a bit unnecessary. I'll tell you what, I did enjoy the 2018 film overall more than I thought I would. As I said, I'm not a big slasher film, so I'm kind of like I was actually kind of expecting like a super uber gory kind of splat fest in this film, because that's kind of where slasher films have gone over the last several years. But I was actually really impressed at how, the teeth thing aside, restrained things were. there was some gore that you'd kind of expect, like the guy bleeding out in the mechanic shop, or seeing the knife go through someone else through the woman's neck. But nothing that was really kind of outside the teeth thing. There's nothing that I really felt was really tasteless or gratuitous.
There's one thing that I did notice, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't do it, because they obviously want to set Michael up as this killer. One of the first people he kills in the movie when he gets back to Haddonfield is he kills this woman who has a baby. And you hear the baby crying, and he walks through the living room, stops by the cradle, hears the baby cry, and then just keeps moving. And Michael Myers, and I didn't notice this until I rewatched this movie today. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when the dad and the kid come across the crashed bus, does Michael Myers not kill that kid?
No, he kills the kid.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's unnecessary.
Well, I mean, from an audience perspective, we could argue all day whether or not that's necessary or unnecessary. But I say that still fits with Michael's utilitarian character. The kid was in the truck. He needed the truck, so he kind of killed the kid who was in his way. Whereas Michael will go after his targets, but he doesn't really tend to. He how can I put this? He'll use what's around him, but he's also not really going to go after anyone who's not really outside of the person that he's chosen to target. He's not going to kill someone just because they happen to, if they're not in his way. So it's like there was no real reason for him to kill the baby, compared with a kid who was not only in the truck but was in the driver's seat of the truck, and Michael Myers needed that truck. Yeah, so it's again, I feel like in that case that was Michael Myers being more utilitarian. Whereas if you wanted to be really gratuitous and senseless about it, yeah, have him kill the baby. But they didn't do that. And, that's, like I said, I was amazed at how restrained the movie was in that sense. That, again, yes, he's killing people and he's doing them in horrible, brutal ways, but it's still in keeping with his utilitarian serial killer style that he had in the first film.
I mean, it's one of the few examples I can think of where a horror movie has the balls to kill a kid. And the only movies I can think of are Halloween, both of them, the Blob remake from 1988, and I'm trying to think if there's another. Oh, Return of the Living Dead Part 2, they kill a kid, and there's probably other examples, but you never see it very often. You do see it more often in Italian horror movies where they'll kill a kid, and some of those are brutal. There's one in particular I can think of. It's in Demons 2. There's this evil vile fluid, I don't know, and it turns the kid into a demon baby, and it's super graphic. But America has always shied away from that, and I'm very glad they did, because some of that's just unnecessary. Although, this is just a very quick sidebar. I did notice when Michael, after he kills that woman and ignores the baby, he's out on the street. Some of the kids have Halloween masks on from Halloween 3. There's one kid has the kind of skeleton mask on, and I never caught that until today. So there's a lot of clever callbacks to the franchise as a whole in the new series, which I thought was actually kind of neat.
Yeah, and actually, my favorite moment of those was when Laurie and Michael are having the fight in the upstairs of the house, and Michael winds up throwing Laurie out the window, and then he looks down from the balcony, and she's disappeared. That scene is shot from the exact same angle and the exact same musical scene as the ending of the original Halloween film.
Yes, very nice homage.
Yeah, so that was a really nice little touch.
One thing I thought, there's one thing I thought this is really cool, and maybe this is more of an American mindset, because you guys have a different culture surrounding weapons and survivalism. I thought that was a really cool angle to take with Laurie, to make her a person who's decided to train themselves to be a weapon, and to have that survival bunker in her house. And there's a line, and I thought this was awesome, where the daughter Allison is calling for her mother, and she's like, I can't do it, and she's got the rifle, and Michael's standing at the top of the stairs, and she's like, I can't do it, and Michael's just about to take the first step. The music just cuts out. Gotcha. Bang! Shoots him. He falls down the stairs. She rushes past him, and a couple seconds later, somebody says a line. I think it's Laurie. She's like, that's not a cage for me. It's a trap for you. And then she sets this like James Bond type house explosion where there's gas heating up, but there's also like a piece of heated filament or some piece of metal that's gonna heat up. So she tosses a flare down as the final fuck you. But even if that doesn't go off and he manages to put that out, there's still a house wired to blow. And I found that a remarkably cool thing. I thought that was a really cool angle to take. And I know there are some Americans who have these survival bunkers in their house. I've never seen one in Canada, though there is one guy who built a bunker out of buses near me. It's weird. But yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool angle to take, to make Laurie not a victim, but she took her life into her own hands at the end of like a magnum and a rifle.
Yeah, and speaking of that scene, there's a shot in that scene that I really love, and again, it's a callback to the first film, but it's after Karen, the daughter, shoots Michael, and then the camera kind of zooms past, and you see Laurie's face appear in shadow, and she says "Happy Halloween."
Yes,
that is a callback to like one of my favorite shots from the original film, where Laurie is in the hallway, and she's kind of leaning against the wall, trying to catch her breath. And you see Michael just kind of suddenly appear in the doorway in the shadow. And the director actually said that shot was composed to actually simulate your eyes adjusting to the darkness. It wasn't supposed to be Michael standing out into the light. It's supposed to simulate your eyes adjusting to the darkness, and that implies that Michael was standing there the whole time, which I thought was a really brilliantly done shot. And I love that callback to it in the 2018 film. One of the things that I kind of thought was really kind of superfluous to the 2018 film was really everything surrounding the granddaughter. I thought that the relationship between Laurie and her daughter Karen provided a lot of nice little meat to her character, and how, you know, the two of them are estranged because of Laurie's obsession with Michael Myers. But I felt like the granddaughter was just really kind of superfluous and didn't really add anything to the movie.
I'd say, yeah, she gets a lot more screen time in Halloween Kills. But yeah, I mean, this was kind of just, I'm here, I'm a setup character, I don't really have anything to do until so far into the movie. Yeah, I don't disagree with this. She was just, I'm there to fill a void and to say some lines.
Yeah, I also thought the whole subplot with the doctor in the 2018 film was really kind of superfluous. Like, you know, we're here to see Michael Myers. We're not here to watch someone try and play, you know, sidekick or wrangler to Michael Myers. And I thought that whole sudden bit at the end where the doctor finally is like, "Oh, I'm not here to stop Michael. I'm here to observe him," was a bit of an ass pull.
Yeah, it seemed so out there and so hokey. I mean, now when that doctor character gets his head stomped in, that's a wickedly cool looking kill. Brutal as shit. I mean, I'm talking, that's almost Cronenberg levels of gross. But yeah, it's just like, really? Like, you're right. It's so unnecessary. You could have used that time to do something else. You could have had a stronger kind of narrative. You could have set up some more scenes with Laurie fighting Michael or her talking about her trauma, but I'm a crazy doctor. I must see him do what he does because evil, I guess?
Yeah, so I really didn't care for the doctor subplot. But you know, other than that, I was remarkably surprised by how much I actually enjoyed the 2018 Halloween film, because it really it felt like getting back to basics. Because so much of one of the big problems with franchise films is you always have to go bigger, you always have to go more, you always have to go more extreme, you always have to introduce some new wrinkle, to some new hook to bring people in. And like I said, in the original continuities of Halloween films, they always came up with some ass pull like, oh, Laurie is actually Michael Myers' sister, or there's this cult of the Thorn that's controlling Michael, and Laurie is supposed to be a sacrifice, or he's some supernatural thing. And it was neat to see Halloween 2018 really just strip all that away, get back to basics, and show that you don't need all this extra shit to make Michael Myers scary.
But I mean, this is one of the better ideas for a soft kind of reboot where you only really need to see the original, and it works, I think, overall as a continuation. Now, moving forward into Halloween Kills, without spoiling it, it does fall off the rails in some fairly significant ways from a storyline perspective. I wonder how Halloween Ends, when that comes out next year, is going to fare. But I will say this, this one is a lot more restrained than Halloween Kills, which is particularly brutal in a couple of scenes. Like unnecessarily cruel and coming close to that Rob Zombie level of brutality, only more technically competent. I don't know, like I want to like this franchise more than I currently do. There's just, the characters here are stronger than, say, Friday the 13th, because you never really get a continuing character outside of like Tommy in like Halloween, or in like Friday the 13th 4 through 6. Here you get Laurie, you get Tommy Doyle, and you get other characters from the first movie make a comeback. Like there's Sheriff Brackett, there's Sheriff Hawkins, stuff like that. There are enough characters that come back. But I don't know. The Halloween reboot starts out really strong. The middle part's a stumble, I think. How this ends, I think, will be how this franchise will be remembered. And then I kind of hope they put this to sleep for a while. Like, I don't want Tales of Halloween, for example. Let the franchise go to bed for 10 or 15 years and then come back at it if they really want to. But without Jamie Lee Curtis, because there's no way she'll be doing this when she's 90. I don't know. I've got some concerns for the future of the franchise, but like you, I did like the 2018 more than I thought I did. One thing I will say about it, the way Michael is lit, and this is like a film nerd thing, you very rarely clearly see his eyes. In fact, I'm pretty sure you don't. You see the side of his face a few times, how he's got a beard. He kind of for some reason, he reminds me of Kevin Nash, for some reason, who's a professional wrestler. So I don't know if I'm alone in seeing that, but there's just the way he looks. The mask is great. It's probably one of the best looking masks in the entire series. And it looks great, but the narrative falls apart in some ways, though 2018 is the strongest of the individual kind of narratives, but Halloween 1978 set the bar on how slashers can be more than, hey, look at gore.
All right. And I think we just kind of talked about everything that there is to talk about between these two films. So so let's turn this over to our listeners. What do you guys think? Which is the superior film, the original 1978 Halloween or the 2018 reboot? Or maybe are you one of those people who like the ones that came out in between? Maybe you're a big fan of H2O or Halloween 4. We'd love to hear why you love those. Maybe you're one of the rare people who actually likes the Rob Zombie films. I don't know. If you are, we want to hear from you because, why?
See, I will go to bat for Rob Zombie for one part of his Halloween reboot, and it's going to be blasphemous to everything I've said so far. I like what they did with the young Michael Myers, except I hate Bill Forsyth. And I can tell you why. He actually was remarkably rude to me at a convention once. He told me to go fuck myself, which I thought was incredible for a celebrity to do that, but assholes too. But yeah, I mean, I do like what they did with young Michael and Michael Myers' mom, and how you could see how the fucked up seeds of him were growing. But yeah, you're right. I would love to hear from other people. What's your favorite Halloween and why? Do you like Halloween 6 director's cut, the producer's cut, or the theatrical cut? There are many, and Paul Rudd never ages. I don't know why.
But yeah, but that's all the time they have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you guys next time. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the Birdman.
All right, we'll see you next time. Happy Halloween. Taka, play us out.